The most dangerous decision a man ever makes is the woman he lets into his life, not the battles he fights, not the enemies he confronts, but the quiet invitation he extends to a woman, into his bed, into his mind, into his kingdom. Because here's what no one tells you. A weak woman doesn't just waste your time. She destroys your edge. She rots your clarity, softens your discipline. She doesn't come with a knife, but you end up bleeding all the same. And most men, they don't even see it coming. Because she doesn't arrive as chaos. She arrives as comfort. She praises you, mirrors your dreams, tells you you're enough, and you fall, not in love, but into weakness disguised as affection. That's where men fail. They confuse being desired with being respected. And in that confusion, they open the gates. They let her in. And once she's in, she doesn't need to destroy you. She only needs to tame you, to make you question your routines, delay your disciplines, skip your solitude. Just one more hour in bed, just one more dinner out, just one more compromise, until your edge is gone, until you've become soft, not on the outside, but where it matters. She doesn't steal your empire. She makes you forget you were building one. And that's how high-value men die. Not with a bang, but with comfort, with validation, with a woman who claps for a version of you that's weaker, quieter, easier to keep. But you're not that man. You don't let a woman in because she's beautiful. You let her in only if she sharpens you, only if her presence is pressure, not praise, challenge, not comfort. Because you're not building a love story. You're building a legacy. And any woman who threatens that doesn't belong. The average man chooses based on beauty. The wise man chooses based on behavior. But the dangerous man, he chooses based on effect. Not what she says, not what she shows, but what happens to his focus when she enters the room. What happens to his discipline when she texts? What happens to his fire after she stays the night? That's the test. Not whether she makes him feel good, but whether she keeps his vision intact. Because he knows, any woman who distracts from the mission is the enemy of the mission. She doesn't have to be malicious. She only has to be misaligned. You want to know a woman's worth? Watch her response to your ambition. Does she interrupt it or intensify it? Does she feel threatened by your solitude or does she respect it? Does she need to be the center of your world? Or can she stand beside you while you build one? Because here's the cold truth. Most women don't want to build with you. They want to benefit from what you've already built. They don't want to be forged by the fire. They want to arrive after the gold is molded. And you're not the finish line. You're the forge. And no woman should enter unless she's ready to burn. That's what weak men never understand. They think loyalty is measured by promises, but high-value men, they measure by pressure. They give no woman a pass just because she's pretty, just because she's loyal, just because she stays. They ask one thing: does she sharpen the blade or dull it? Because at this level, love isn't affection. Love is alignment. And any woman who makes you softer, slower, or smaller is not love. She's a liability. You don't test her with questions. You test her with silence, because words lie, reactions don't. Most men try to qualify women with conversation. They ask about her past, her dreams, her morals. But you watch, you withdraw, you let space grow. And then you observe, does she spiral? Does she chase? Does she punish you with passive aggression? Or does she remain composed? Because silence reveals the one thing no profile ever will: emotional discipline. A woman who cannot handle distance will never handle your purpose. She'll interrupt your solitude. She'll guilt trip your grind. She'll call your focus cold and your clarity selfish. Not because you're wrong, but because she's uncomfortable not being the center. And a woman who needs constant validation will always trade your power for her comfort. That's why you don't feed the need. You don't reassure the insecure. You don't bend to soothe the storm she created. You let her feel your absence, not to punish her, but to reveal her. Because every high-value man must know this. The right woman will never be threatened by your silence. She will respect it, echo it, match it. She won't beg for access. She'll earn it by being calm, not chaotic, steady, not reactive. She won't try to control what she doesn't understand. She'll observe it, hold space for it. And if she can't, you don't argue, you vanish. Because the moment you explain your discipline to the undisciplined, you've already lost it. You're not choosing a lover. You're choosing a liability or an asset. And every woman, no matter how sweet her voice, how soft her touch, comes with a cost. Some multiply your clarity. Others drain it drop by drop. And it's your job to know which is which before the price becomes your purpose. The world will applaud you for having her. But when the applause fades, she's still in your home, in your habits, in your head. She's still influencing what you think, how you move, and what you ignore in yourself. So ask the real questions. Does her presence increase your hunger or numb it? Do you train harder, focus deeper, lead stronger when she's around? Or does everything soften just enough to delay you? Because here's the Machiavellian truth. The greatest threat to a man's future isn't his enemies. It's the woman he lets whisper in his bed. The wrong woman doesn't destroy with malice. She destroys with comfort, with distractions disguised as connection, with just enough affection to make you forget you're being diluted. And the moment you become afraid to lose her, you've already lost yourself. That's why you must remain ruthless, not toward her, but toward the part of you that still wants to be chosen more than respected. Because that part of you, that's the one she'll manipulate, not consciously, but instinctively. She'll test your fire. She'll slow your rhythm, not to harm you, but to prove you're hers. And if she can bend your structure, she'll never trust your strength again. Not because she's evil, but because women only feel safe in the presence of unbreakable men, men who choose with clarity and walk away without permission. You don't date, you assess. You don't ask, do I like her? You ask, can she stand next to me without shrinking my purpose? Because the real man, the one building something bigger than himself, doesn't let a woman in based on feelings. He lets her in based on function. She is either a mirror or a mask. She either reflects your power or dulls it with softness. So you watch. Does she respect time? Does she move in discipline or emotional chaos? Is her femininity built on nurturing and grounding, or seduction and control? Most men can't tell the difference. They confuse validation with value. They think beauty means alignment. They get seduced by aesthetics and end up sacrificing their empire for curves and compliments. But not you. You test quietly, not with gifts, not with games, but with boundaries. You withhold attention. You delay reward. You speak directly. You let her sit in your silence without flinching to fix it. And how she responds tells you everything. A high-value woman welcomes structure. She's not intimidated by your edge. She sharpens it. She doesn't demand space in your mission. She respects the throne you're building. But a low-value woman? She wants access without alignment. She wants your time without responsibility. She wants to be a queen without ever earning the crown. So you do what most men are too afraid to do. You watch. You wait. You walk. Because the woman who truly belongs, she doesn't chase your attention. She rises to your standard. This is the moment where men with clarity cut and men without it cling. You've watched her. You've observed her rhythm, her patience, her ability to handle your silence and structure. And now, one question remains. Does she earn proximity or does she drain it? Because most women don't need to be toxic to be dangerous. All they need is to distract you just enough that your mission fades from sharp to soft, from edge to ease, from movement to maintenance. And that cost? It compounds. A skipped morning, a delayed decision, a subtle shift in standards, until one day you look in the mirror and the man staring back at you isn't lethal anymore. He's available. He's obedient, he's romantic, but he's no longer dangerous. And a man who loses his danger, he loses everything. So now you decide, not with anger, not with ego, but with equation. Is her presence a multiplier of momentum or an emotional weight? Does she anchor you deeper or pull you sideways? Can she sit in your world without needing to be its center? If the answer is no, you don't explain, you don't fix, you exit. Because the strongest signal of a high-value man isn't how long he holds on. It's how quickly he walks when clarity hits. You don't ghost, you don't beg, you don't spiral. You speak one sentence, clean, cold, final. This isn't aligned. And then you disappear, because your loyalty is no longer for sale. Your attention is not a reward for beauty, and your energy is reserved for a woman who can stand in fire without asking you to dim your heat. And then she appears, not the one who flatters, not the one who fakes softness to gain access, but the one who sees you, truly, and doesn't flinch. She doesn't compete with your mission. She doesn't distract from your silence. She doesn't melt when you don't reply, and she doesn't crumble in the absence of attention, because she's not here for validation. She's here for alignment. She carries her own fire, not to outshine yours, but to walk beside it, without fear, without performance. She doesn't beg to be led. She moves with direction. She doesn't need saving. She's already done her own inner work, and she can smell a man who has too. With her, you don't explain why you disappear for hours. She respects your process. You don't apologize for choosing routine over romance. She values consistency over chaos. You don't shrink your standards. She matches them. And that changes everything. Because now, for the first time, you're not managing a woman's emotions. You're expanding with her. The silence? It's shared. The discipline? Mutually held. The energy? Not draining, but doubling. And in this rare union, something sacred happens. You stop proving. She stops performing. And both of you just become. She becomes the mirror that doesn't distort, the challenge that doesn't wound, the softness that doesn't seduce, but stabilizes. And for a man like you, that's the rarest form of desire. A woman who doesn't cost your power, but completes your direction. Now the game is gone. No performance, no pulling, no proving, just presence, and two sovereign forces walking the same path, not holding each other, but holding direction. She doesn't need you to complete her. You don't need her to motivate you. You're both already whole. And from that wholeness comes clarity. Because when a man has built his center and a woman has built her emotional discipline, they don't become each other's escape. They become each other's mirror of expansion. You don't text all day. You don't ask where she is or why she's quiet. You both trust the absence because it's filled with devotion to something bigger than each other. You still lead, not because she needs it, but because you were born for it. She doesn't follow from submission, but from alignment. This is not love as the world knows it. This is partnership without possession. She doesn't ask to be prioritized over your purpose. She chooses to walk beside it. She doesn't collapse into emotion. She holds frame with you. And that, for a man who's seen chaos, is rarer than beauty, rarer than chemistry, rarer than any fleeting high. Because what you've found isn't a woman. It's a frequency, one that doesn't seduce you out of yourself, but draws you deeper into your discipline. And that's the paradox. The woman who's easiest to lose is the only one you never want to. Not because you need her, but because her presence makes the mission more precise, sharper, cleaner, faster. She's not the path. She's the clarity on it. You've built too much to bleed for the wrong woman again. You've sacrificed comfort for clarity. You've buried the boy who begged. You've earned the silence most men can't sit with. So now, even when she's beautiful, aligned, rare, you're still willing to walk, not out of fear, not out of pride, but because you know what it costs to compromise your edge. You remember the version of yourself that tolerated drama, that confused chaos with passion, that chose affection over alignment. And you made a vow, never again. Now, you trust actions over apologies, energy over words, behavior over potential, even with her, because no woman, no matter how aligned she once was, is above the standard. And the moment her presence shifts from sacred to heavy, you act quietly, decisively, without drama. Because when a man honors his discipline above his desire, he becomes unreachable to manipulation. He doesn't argue. He doesn't explain. He doesn't stay for history or chemistry or what could be. He leaves, not because she failed, but because she no longer fits the man he has become. And that man, he never apologizes for growing, because he knows the wrong woman will cost you your fire. The right one will guard it like her own. And if neither exists, you walk alone, but never lonely. There is no tragedy in walking alone. The tragedy is in walking with someone who slows your steps, who dilutes your fire, who calls your silence distance and your standards too much. But you've outgrown that now. You don't chase chemistry. You create alignment. You don't seek comfort. You master discipline. And love? It's no longer a craving. It's an extension of your clarity, not a replacement for it. You've become the man who doesn't ask to be loved. He invites presence, but never compromises for it. He holds space. He builds. He chooses with ruthless precision. Because he knows, one wrong woman will cost you years. The right one will multiply your legacy. So you don't settle. You don't explain your edge. You don't make yourself softer to be more lovable. You remain exact. And that exactness, it filters the world. It attracts only the rare. It protects your mission. Most will misunderstand you. Many will call you cold. Some will say you're afraid of love. But you're not afraid of love. You're afraid of forgetting who you are. And if loving her means betraying that man, you'll walk without guilt, without noise, without ever looking back. Because now you know, your discipline is the throne. Your solitude is the test. Your legacy is the queen. And the woman who gets to stand beside you, she won't demand the crown. She'll come wearing her own.